Hello, P.O. Please. Tease Sky here. Does anyone else call people's P.O. Please, or is that just me? Welcome to Reclaim the podcast. I am happy that you are here, and I'm happy that you are listening to day 6 of the 10 Days of Worth series. 10 days is a long time. These are a lot of episodes, and there's a lot of content in each one. So take your time listening to these episodes, and also know that you can listen to them again and again and again. They are not going anywhere. But I do like the momentum, the celebration, being in the worthiness season, to really get all these 10 episodes out there. So by no means do you have to feel pressured to listen to all of these back to back, though at the same time, I'm not afraid of admitting that I do like to binge on a TV show every once in a while, So maybe you're a fan of binging Reclaim the podcast. I do not blame you for wanting to do that. Anyway, today we are talking about busyness, productivity. We're talking about how our truths can be closing ourselves off to growth, why feedback and flexibility is essential. We're going to be talking a lot about ways to cultivate a life of depth and meaning. And depth and meaning does not come from busyness and being busy and being productive. And in fact, oftentimes when we're talking about worth and talking about worthiness, we're referring to our sense of productivity and how productive we're being and how busy we're being and how many things we're checking off of our to-do list. And I am the first to admit that I am a lover of a good to-do list. In fact, I am like one of the many people who will literally do something, look at my to-do list, see that it's not there, add it there just so that I can check that bad boy off. So I am hyper aware of the ways in which my desire for productivity feeds my worthiness. And at the same time, if we don't start to do the investigative work of really seeing how our busyness is actually an intimacy issue and how intimacy issues plays out in various aspects of our lives and how it's all connected to our worthiness wound, if we're not interrogating that, we run the risk of living our lives unconsciously, of doing things just to do things, at which point that begs the question of how different is that than ants? Ants are really, really busy, but we can see that's what are they really busy for? And is that how we want to be? Is that how we want to operate? With that level of being truly just unconscious and running the narrative that our capitalistic society really thrives off of, but our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health may not. So these are some of the things that I want you to be thinking about as you listen to this episode. Thank you to all of you that have been reaching out, saying how this series has been impacting you in some way or another. Really appreciate all of that feedback. I am loving that you all are loving this series. It means the world. And I'm so glad that you get to be in a celebration of worth with me. Because truly, worthiness is a declaration, right? It's a statement to the world that says that we belong here and that we can take up space and that there's absolutely nothing that can truly take our worth away from us. Our worth is ours. It is inherently within us. Nothing can take it away. Systemic oppression may try, right? Challenges in our life may try. People may try, but nothing can take it away because it is ours for reclaiming. And now it is just up to us to decide that, to claim that, to make it ours, and to do the work of exploring where the worthiness wound is creeping up. What is it saying to us? And how can we really be tender to that places within us so that we can come home to ourselves again and again and again? Okay, without much further ado, let's go into these episodes. Welcome to Reclaim, a podcast for women, by women, on conversations that matter. I am your host, Thais Sky, international speaker, teacher, and a certified life coach currently working to become a licensed psychotherapist in the state of California. Join me here every week as I offer thoughts and interviews on what it means to reclaim your humanness in this messy world. Today we're talking about the spiral of being busy. And this is one of the big ways that I see women refuse to really acknowledge and look at their sense of unworthiness is by distracting themselves with busyness. How often have we done this? How often have we found ourselves running into a spiral of to-dos and keeping ourselves busy with all of the stuff because we don't know why. we just know that we don't want to slow down. It's like we have this unconscious, like inherent sense of, if I slow down, I'm going to have to face my shit. And I don't want to face my shit because I don't want to come to the realization that I actually am broken and I actually am invalid, that I actually don't belong. So I'm going to stay in a spiral of busyness. Yeah? How many of us do that? This is something that's very, very, very common. We use busyness as a form of numb. We use our focus on our work, or our focus on our fitness, or our focus on a social life, and we're constantly doing because we can't stand the idea of slowing down, because we have a feeling that when we slow down, things are going to come up. And so this is very, very often, I notice women now want to get onto their meditation cushion. They have a huge resistance to sitting down and meditating. And when we are so accustomed to being so busy all the time, this is kind of normal because we have accustomed ourselves to spiraling and running and achieving and getting this external validation so that we don't have to be with ourselves. So we use busyness as a distraction. We use busyness as a form to numb ourselves. And I see this also, not necessarily being overly busy, but in people who, they start a project, right? They get really excited. They start a project, and then pretty soon the excitement starts to peter out and they kind of lose focus. So they go to another project, and then they get really, really excited about that project, and then that kind of peters out, and then they go to another one. So they have all of these unfinished projects, or they can't focus and they're navigating like 10 different projects at the same time, and nothing ever seems to get done. That is also the spiral of busyness, because what we're saying when we say that we're busy, what we're saying when we say that we're overwhelmed by so much work that we've got to do, what we're really saying is that we're terrified of intimacy. It's an intimacy issue. Busyness is an intimacy issue. Anytime I invite someone to get coffee or lunch with me, they say, oh, I'm busy. What I hear is they're having troubles with intimacy with themselves and their projects. Because everyone is busy in a society that values productivity, right? Of course, we're all going to be busy because that's what we've been taught and programmed to do, that we take validation and our worthiness from what we do. How many of that are we experiencing that, right? How many of us, I should say, are experiencing that? We definitely derive so much of our worthiness from our output, because in our capitalistic society, by you producing, you're a productive member of society, I guess we'll say it that way, right? And that's good. And you're affirmed that that's what the society wants. So, of course, we use busyness as a way to validate our worth, but it doesn't work, because what we're doing when we're so inherently busy is we're developing deeper intimacy issues. So we want to be looking at that intimacy issue. And I want you to start to notice around which times of the projects or which times of the day you start to notice yourself getting distracted and not being able to really focus. And notice, of course, if that's because you're tired, etc. But also notice if because there's an intimacy issue there, an intimacy with the project, an intimacy with your belief systems, an intimacy with silence and spaciousness. When we're so overly caught up in receiving some form of belonging from our busyness, it's like ants working hard, it's so, it burns us out. And while I feel like we're doing something good because we're busy, when we slow down, we notice that there's actually a big disconnect there. And that disconnect tends to be our worthiness wound. So it's not to say that you're not allowed to be busy, or you're not allowed to have a busy day, or to have a big to-do list. It's not to say that you're not allowed to say yes to a lot of different things, or whatever we're trying to make mean out of this. What we're saying is there is a direct correlation between being in the spiral of busyness and our inability to be with ourselves. And we want to start to bridge that gap by noticing if you're using busyness as a form of distraction, if you're using busyness and achieving as a validation for your existence and for your worth. And again, that's most of us. So there's no shame or judgment there. This is definitely something that catches a lot of us. But when we're talking about healing the worthiness wound, what's required there is spaciousness. It's a settling. It's an invitation. I see the manifestation of the worthiness wound as an invitation that who we are is being like we've split from who we really are. There's a disconnect there. And so affirming the ways that we feel unworthy is the path of worthiness. Affirming the ways that we feel lost and that we have issues with intimacy because we're so busy is the way back towards our worthiness. But we have to carve that space to be able to even acknowledge that. This is something so unconscious. I think for most people, being busy and productive is their high. And of course, it leads to burnout. But because we've associated ourselves as identity of achiever, we're not going to slow down until we burn out. And then we burn out, we get sick. And then what happens? So for many of us, we can't even be with that burnout because we're already thinking about all the things that we've got to do. We don't even really enjoy our spaciousness because we're already thinking about all the ways that we should be focused on doing work, right? So we have to start to undo this, like deprogram all of this and find a different way of relating with ourselves. And one of the best ways to do that is just to notice when you're using things to distract yourself or when you're using things to nourish yourself. And we can check in with this in the simplest of things. Like when you're waiting in line, like do you feel like you have to be productive and you have to do things? Do you have to be on the phone? Do you have to be distracting yourself? Or can you actually just be in line? You know? When you are hiking in the woods, are you thinking about your to-do list? When you're in yoga class, are you thinking about everything you gotta do? Or are you practicing coming back to yourself? This is a living meditation where we're just inviting ourselves to come back. We notice ourselves being gone in the matrix of the doing, and then we bring ourselves back. We bring ourselves back. No judgment. No judgment. This is bringing that power back from the external validation to the internal worth. And it's a really beautiful journey to be on. Because when we can really sit with our discomfort of our unworthiness, we find our worth right there, right underneath the surface. We just have to create that container first of being able to be with what is uncomfortable. I want to talk today about how the spiritual community is shooting itself in the foot and what we can do about it. I have been in the spiritual community for over 10 years. I am a yoga teacher or have taught yoga. I'm not currently teaching right now, but I teach yoga. I teach meditation. And the spiritual community has in every which way completely revolutionized and changed my life. When I had my first awakening to this idea of God, universe, spirit, whatever, I was in a very low point in my life. I was very angry. I was very alone. And having this connection to this greater force outside of myself is what allowed me to start to dismantle some of my internalized beliefs around my lovability and my, worthiness and my place in the world. So when I'm speaking about the spiritual community, I'm speaking from a place of deep reverence and deep love because this community nourishes and supports me in so many ways. And I have seen, because I'm in this space, I have seen one of the biggest problems that the spiritual community and spiritual women face. And I want to talk about it because I believe that it deeply connects to our worthiness wound. And I think that if we don't change this, we're really causing a greater split within ourselves, not even within the world. There's a lot of problems that the spiritual community is perpetuating in the world, but I'm talking about specifically within ourselves because we see this being modeled in other people and we think that this is the way that we should model it. And I believe it's causing a deeper internal split and it's causing a lot of pain. And then that pain is going outward and really creating a deeper sense of disconnect between what's happening in the real world and what's happening in the spiritual community. So let me just get right to it. What I deeply believe that is happening in the spiritual community is our inability to receive feedback and to have real conversations. When we receive feedback from somebody, maybe outside of the spiritual community, that's saying something like, I don't believe that what you're saying is true, our natural response, what we've been kind of internalized and taught to do, is to say something along the lines of, you're projecting your shit on me. This has nothing to do with me. This has everything to do with you. And we're doing this from a morally superior place where we know the truth and they don't. We know the truth about manifestation. We know the truth about God. We know the truth about universal laws, and they don't. And so we have a moral superiority over them, because who are they to be hating on you? You know, they're morally inferior to you. So any feedback, any pushback that you receive in any capacity, it's just their projection. It's just their projection. What's ironic is that also underlying in the spiritual community is this idea of take responsibility. Like, take responsibility for what happens to you. So what I'm seeing is we're taking too much responsibility in one places and not enough responsibility in another. It's causing ourselves a lot of turmoil. We're constantly pushing away any feedback that goes against our beliefs, our beliefs of ourselves. And we're calling it being a hater. Taylor Swift received pushback for using feminism as her platform, even though she's not truly a feminist, is not truly supporting women. And she called that as, we shouldn't be criticizing each other. You know, women empower women. And so if you're disempowering me, then you're not for women. Do you see how that's actually gaslighting? So there is a way that we can exchange feedback, that we can exchange thoughtful critique of each other's work, each other's stuff, without driving that down to being a hater. And when we label any type of feedback, any type of pushback as being a hater, what we're doing is we're blocking out the possibility of our own growth. Now, I truly believe in a lot of things. I do. I believe in a lot of things, and I'm allowed to believe those things, but I don't have to have everyone else believe those things too. And everyone else have to agree with me in order for me to be validated in my beliefs. And what I'm seeing is this is not much different than what happens in the religious communities, which ironically is what we're trying to get away from by being in the spiritual community, right? We see religious communities and we have this word, it's called dogma, where people are pushing their beliefs and we're just gullibly believing it. We're not pushing back. We're not questioning. We're not doing anything with it. And we're seeing how that doesn't work. And yet then what we're doing, we're saying, well, universe is love. And if you don't believe that, then you're a hater and you don't know the truth. And we're completely shutting down any sort of conversation. It's not your responsibility to convert anybody else to your belief system. And we are allowed to have belief systems. We are absolutely allowed to thrive in our belief systems. Hell, my belief systems about what it is to be human has taken me through the darkest of times. And we're allowed to share those beliefs. But what we're not allowed, what I'm suggesting that we don't do is shut people out just because they're offering us a different perspective. Because when we do that, we're disconnecting from our own selves. If something that you believe in is not open to criticism or critique or feedback, whatever you want to call it, it's not standing on a real foundation. We're seeing right now one of the worst presidents in the history of the United States, and he's obsessed with fake news. Tell me, how is his obsession with fake news any different than the spiritual community's obsession with being a projection, and how any negative opinion is just negative vibes and complete dismissing it? Tell me how it's any different that Trump is unable to receive feedback, and the spiritual community's inability to actually have grounded conversations about the repercussions of what they're doing. It's heartbreaking, and it's shooting ourselves in the foot, because until we're able to be receptive and open, we can't grow. You know, one of my favorite lines from A Course in Miracles, which in and of itself has some problems, right? The Course in Miracles has some problems, but one of my favorite lines from it is, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. And to me, my belief around that means that whenever we find ourselves needing to defend, needing to guard up, needing to say, you're projecting, you're hating, this is all on you, has nothing to do with me, then we are not actually, we're feeling unsafe from a primal perspective of our belief system being questioned. And that's not what's actually happening. This is what I believe that we can start to do about this. Is we need to start developing a deeper belief in ourselves that is beyond our belief systems, right? When our identity is too much into our belief systems, anytime there's a threat to that identity, there's a threat to our ego, and we want to push away. So I believe that we need to bring our worthiness not on whether or not we consider ourselves spiritual and own the mala beads and do the yoga, but to something deeper within ourselves. And then I also believe that we really have to be asking ourselves when we receive, critique, feedback, pushback, ask ourselves, is there any even tiny grain of truth in this? And maybe there's not, and that's cool. But maybe there is, and maybe it's uncomfortable. And for so much of how we talk in the spiritual community about not spiritually bypassing and to be bringing in our emotions, it's fascinating how quick we are to not feel into uncomfortable emotions. I'm seeing such a rise because of Brené's Brown work of calling each other shaming. Like, you're shaming me. You're shaming me. I can't talk about this or else I'm shaming people. Listen, the only way you truly shame people is by saying you are bad. And if we're not saying that, and if we're not overtly saying that, can we remove this idea that we've got to be like pointing fingers, like you're shaming me, therefore anything that you say is not of value? Because that's tone policing. There may be value there. It just may not be in the right delivery. Calling in versus calling out also helps, but few people are familiar with what that looks like or how that feels to be practiced. Thanks, Em. Yeah, you're right. I do think that calling in versus calling out is a great concept that we can explore more in the spiritual community. It's definitely something that I've seen a lot in the social justice world, and I think it could be very helpful to be bringing into the spiritual community. So this idea of calling in versus calling out, calling out is a sense of like when you are called out in the middle of a group because of your ugly gym socks. Right. And you're like called out and like everyone like laughs at you and you're like, like you're wearing ugly gym socks, even whether or not that's the case. We see that a lot with like little kids and bullying, and you're calling each other out, and it's hurtful and it pushes people away. Versus calling in is this energy of, let me invite you in. Let me share with you, what's coming up for me. Let's talk about this. And there are many ways that we can do this, and there's many energy levels that we can talk about with this. But what I'm trying to get at specifically here is that our rigidity is going to be our demise. And no matter where that comes out, too much opinions, too much rigidity, too much inability to be flexible is going to end up killing us, because just like a tree that's too stiff can't survive in the wind, a belief system, a personality system within us that is too rigid is going to break. And if we want this community to survive and thrive, which I do for sure, I want it to grow and thrive. I want it to be inclusive. I want it to be grounded in reality. I want it to be us able to look at what's happening in the real world and carry our true spiritual understandings. Like, if we truly want that, we can't push away any negative feedback. This pushing away can be really, really, really detrimental to our heart, because what we're doing is we're pushing away our worthiness by being so adamant that our belief is the right belief and not being soft in our opinions, not being soft to what's coming up, not being soft and receptive. Then we really hurt ourselves. And there's a nuance here, and it's not lost on me. We've got to talk about boundaries versus, letting everything in. And so many of us are empaths, and so it's very easy for us to be very, very sensitive to the feedback of others. And I actually find that, again, that's all part of the worthiness wound. When you develop a strong sense of self, you can still be sensitive and you can still be hurt, because that's whatever, but it doesn't collapse you. You can receive feedback and be in that exchange without it completely collapsing you. And that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for a strong tree that can sway in the wind, where you have your belief systems, you have your North Star, you believe in them, you share them, you talk about them. But it's not this thing where if anyone pushes against it, you break and you collapse and you spiral. And that's what I believe happens the more we access who we truly are. Okay, so this is why I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We're saying everything's a projection. We're saying everything's a hater. We're pushing away without letting any of that open us up. And so I want you, as you're thinking about this today, see if this resonates with you, right? Take what does, leave what doesn't. But also really ask yourself, like, when's the last time, when was the last time that I received feedback, and how did I respond to that feedback? What happened? What was that exchange like? What was that energy exchange like? How did I feel? How did they feel? One of the things that I think that we all need to cultivate a deeper ability to do is to listen. There was a woman, Robyn DAngelo. She leads these conversations about race. She's a white woman that leads conversations about race, and she was asking an audience, like an audience of people that were both of, they were all different races, Black people and white people and brown people and all the people, and she asked the people of color, what would happen if white people were able to listen and be receptive when you told them that there was harm caused to you because of their ignorance to race. And the people of color in the room were like, oh my God, that would change everything. If only they were more receptive. But we're not receptive. We close up, we take it personal, we shut down, we collapse, we push. And this defense is causing a lot of real life pain beyond the spiritual. It's causing real life pain. It's causing violence. It's causing, it's causing violence. And when we cause violence externally, it's because we're experiencing violence internally. So our ability to listen, I think, is it's critical. It's key. We've got to learn how to develop more of it. We're not really creating a strong foundation if we're not able to really look at the challenges and then fix them and do something with them. And I commit every single day to walk my talk and to be receptive. And when people push back against me, I don't take it personally. I've cultivated that ability of not taking it personally and really being able to sit with, okay, where's the common ground here? Where are you coming from? Is this something that I want to bring into my life? What's the deeper conversation that has to be had here? And what I find is at the end of the day, we're all humans and we all are fucked up and none of us know what we're doing. And when we can be real with each other and level with each other and listen to each other, we create the type of love that the spiritual community wants so much of. Isn't that ironic? We want so much love and yet we push away the hate. Well, it doesn't quite work that way, right? We gotta be in that love and accept even the things that are uncomfortable. And use it as our alchemy, use it as a catalyst to our growth.
Thank you for listening to Reclaim the Podcast. This podcast represents the opinions of Thais Sky and her guests to the show. The content of this podcast are for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional psychological, psychiatric, or medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental disorder.